Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Through Dangers Untold, a chapter-by-chapter breakdown of the classic fantasy film Labyrinth. I'm your host as always, Elwood, and joining me, of course, is my glamorous co-host, Miss Emily.
Hello!
On our previous episodes, we got into a bit of a heated discussion over whether Sarah's stepmother is actually evil or not. It would seem, judging by social media, that everyone sided with Emily on that one, so...
As they should.
So yeah, if you if we had any sort of opinions on whether Sarah's stepmother is evil, the unresounding response from the last episode was yes, she is. But as I've said on the last episode, Underground, we got a good look at Sarah's bedroom, and we ended up going into her parents' bedroom where Toby is, as she went to receive her precious bear, Lancelot. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. I wouldn't call it her favourite. Lots of sources call it her favourite, and I think that's just reductive. I think it's just a well-loved bear that is not Toby's, but with Toby, who is crying.
Yes, so this episode was one that really put me through the ringer, because being a parent, and that you probably find this when you have kids, is that whenever you have kids and you see children in peril in films or children being upset, it will have the most horrible response it would create in yourself, as you just want to comfort said child and stop them crying, because you have now been programmed by your own children just to feel as awful as possible, and the need to appease them whenever they get upset, and as Toby clearly is.
Yeah, I had that as my first note. My first note is, I find the baby annoying. Does it still make you hurt to hear it?
Yes. It doesn't help the fact that Toby looks a lot like my youngest. It's all in the face. It's no.
You boy.
Oh.
No, I'm still very much on the Sarah bandwagon of,
yeah.
God, Toby, shut up. You're so annoying. Wah. What are you even crying about? You don't have bills.
Sarah has bills. Sarah is too busy stewing over the fact that her stepmother dared to make her stay home with the baby, and that because she hasn't got a date, that she's on babysitting duties. So she decides that this is the perfect opportunity to vent her anguish about how, in Sarah world, she's this Cinderella-style character who cooks and cleans, despite the fact she does neither of these things. And
you don't know that. You don't know that for a fact. It is
that
not
house
ever
looks like it's got
explicitly...
money. It looks like someone maintains that house.
Yeah, Sarah.
So, when she's not hanging around in the park, she's...
Yeah. When she's not dragging the dog that's covered in mud through the landing, yeah, she's cleaning up after the dog.
maybe that's why she didn't care about the dog coming in. It's sort of well, I'm gonna have to clean it up anyway.
She's it's my job to fucking clean up after this dog. So, yeah, exactly. So
yeah, Sarah's essentially.
There's no evidence that she doesn't cook and clean.
Okay, well, Sarah, if we're to believe her, is essentially every female heroine in a Ghibli movie.
I think that's a bit. I don't know, because they're often... You could sort of call her Chihiro, and she's a little bit spoiled and a little bit sort of bratty.
I was just talking more about the cleaning aspect, because they're always cleaning. If you look at My Neighbor Totoro, the girls are cleaning. You look at Spirited Away, she's cleaning.
I do.
Kiki's Delivery Service, she's cleaning.
I don't know if you know this about me, Elwood, but I love a cleaning scene. If you've got a cleaning scene in your movie, I'm there. That's an automatic 4-star rating.
Okay.
At least. Yeah, big fan. One day I'm going to rate all of them.
That's an interesting trope. I don't think I've heard anyone say that a cleaning montage is their top thing.
I feel like I talk about it all the time. I feel like I'm always in this cupboard talking about how satisfying it is when Sophie puts calcifer in a bucket and then gets the ashes and she scrapes them into that rug that she's put on the floor, and then she collects it all up and takes the ashes outside to dump them, and the fireplace is clean, and it's just you know, it's so good. I fucking love it when people clean shit.
Is this on the same par as like a fixing things up montage, or is that something completely different to yourself?
No, I don't want to see anyone like hammering.
Yeah.
Like the shitty opening of a crap porn. I need to see like the kids in It, like scrubbing the blood off the mirror and then like squeezing the flannels of blood down the bath. And I'm like, yeah, clean that puberty reference. Get it out of here.
It's not me. It's only me who makes that joke then when they see that scene. When she like comes out the bathroom covered in blood, it's like, I got my period.
Well, it's the point of the scene. Like, I know this is a Labyrinth podcast, but just to sidetrack into It Chapter 1, that's the whole point, because her dad, the implication is that her dad is going to sexually abuse her.
Yeah.
So that's why she cuts her hair, and that's why she doesn't want to reach her period, because she worries that when she does, her dad's going to see her as a legal adult, so he's going to be able to actually start penetrating her. Like, I thought that was a given with the imagery. And so her huge fear is getting her period and, like, being a grown woman, and he's always like, you're still my baby girl, aren't you? And it's like a whole thing tied in with that. She's really, no offense to everyone else in that movie, but she's really the one dealing with like the most hardcore issues there, and that's why Pennywise doesn't need to send her like a goofy picture or like a silly clown. Like, he just needs to send her cold hard fucking facts. You're gonna bleed from your uterus for 5 days a week every month until you're like 50. Can you imagine being told that at the age of 11? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I've only seen It Chapter 1 once because it's really long and there's a lot going on, so you have to excuse me if I miss.
I really got time.
I really enjoyed both parts of it. I thought it was really great. It's just it's really long, and I
didn't like part 2.
Again, it's just
part 2 was long.
I don't always have the time to sit down and enjoy it. I've got them both in the collection, so I will revisit it and certainly appreciate that scene a lot more.
Hell yeah.
But Sarah
You're welcome.
is really one of those heroines we don't have to see any sort of like graphic reference to change like this. It's more the journey we're going to see.
Well, the whole movie is the graphic change, isn't it?
It's her having to deal with many sort of aspects as that journey into womanhood. But right now, she's still very much the. And I'm always like really cautious whenever I say anything negative against Sarah, because I feel that you're just going to launch at me now.
It's so funny. We are literally like other sides of the country talking through like a screen.
Yeah.
And yet, I feel like I could Willy Wonka reach into the screen, and instead of grabbing out chocolate, I'll grab out your throat and be like, what did you say about Sarah?
So...
Say that again.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird the things we get really defensive about, isn't it, when it comes to cinema? As we were talking about before we came on the air tonight, the certain films that I managed to burn a fair amount of bridges with over the years, and my defense of them, so... but... Yeah, when it comes to Sarah, I mean, we get another Sarah performance here. She's not just like venting her frustration. She's being so theatrical about it, and like in her head, it's all, as I said, she's this Cinderella fantasy. She cooks, she cleans, she looks after the baby, and all she wants is just her life back. But no, she's got to stay here and listen to this child who's treated like a little prince in her head, and he just like cries and demands and gets everything he wants. But again, that's just babies for you. It's what they do. But in Sarah's head, it's all a personal attack on her. Toby's deliberately crying, deliberately setting out to ruin her evening, and her parents are doing absolutely nothing about it. So she decides that she's going to call on the goblins to take the baby away.
Well, because of a very important bit of the story that you missed out. Like, she is a slave in her own household, and she has to look after the baby. But what the girl didn't know is that the king of the goblins had fallen in love with her, and he gave her some special powers, which ties in nicely to your theory of it's all in her head, because it's very foreshadowy to the entire movie. But then there's a bit which is very true to me and my true believer status, when she does try to call on the goblins, and they exist. And it's so great. Like, it's so great. The way they're all just in this pile.
Yeah.
And the one in the middle, the eyes just open and he's like, listen. And you're like, holy shit. Because right up until this point, we have had nothing but human adults in like a very generic-y 80s sort of film. And then all of a sudden, it's like, what the shit is that? Like, oh my God, where are we? Who are they? Why are they omnipotent? What's going on? Like, it's so exciting and it's done so dramatically. And then you've got the mise en scène and the pathetic fallacy in the room where Sarah is with the lightning. And it's just shot so well, this scene. The back and forth between the pit of goblins and Sarah in the room, which slowly turns into like the room from Hereditary. Like, slowly, Toby turns around and he's like, I am your mother! Yeah, it's very, very scary scene, this one. I like it a lot.
Well, both these next two chapters, they really tap into that sort of entry-level horror sort of theme. You know, it's dark rooms and stormy weather.
Lightning flashes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really appealed to me as a kid. Like, she has this wonderful monologue that she really puts her all into. Like, she really is commendable in this entire movie and life. But with this monologue in particular, the way she plays around with the hat, looking in the mirror, all of these little fairy tale references, and then, like, the introduction of the real goblins is so, so exciting and confirms that it did really happen and it's not in her head. And it's such a great little story, and like the way she like throws Toby around.
Oh yeah.
And the dramatic sort of like Goblin King, wherever you may be. It's so good, and it's such a high. Take this child of mine far away from me. And then we have our first injection of real comedy in this movie that we haven't seen yet. Like, no one's really done anything particularly like comical.
Yeah.
And then we get our first sort of subverting modern fairy tale, almost like, for want of a better term, like Shrekish, you know, when it's like, oh, where'd you hear that rubbish? It doesn't even start with I wish. Like, really, this is just going to be me. Hi, welcome to Three Dangers Untold, the podcast where Elwood tries to talk about Labyrinth and Emily just, like, quotes the entire movie for, like, hours on end.
It's what you all came here for, let's face it.
It's so, I love that as well. I love that, like, again, meta's the wrong word, but that sort of, like, twist in our tail, as Susan Sarandon would say in Enchanted, where they take the sort of classic stuff and they just like make it funny, not in like a Your Highness way. God, how many movie references can Emily get in one sentence? But in like in a Jim Henson way, in a Muppety way.
It is a very Muppet sort of scene, isn't it? And I think this is the thing, when you have anything with like Jim Henson attached to it, even while he goes dark, he can't help but put those like Muppet style elements of humor in it. So these characters are very sort of slapsticky, or they're very sort of humorous.
And I would argue that Dark Crystal doesn't have the same type of humor.
It still has like characters like Fizzgig, where she's like, "Oh, it's sort of like you stay here," and then he like bowls his head off until she says you can come along. So Fizzgig's like the proto Toby.
Well, he's this sort of Grembly Gunk or whatever he's called from the Black Cauldron, but less annoying because he can't make sentences. But this feels a much more Muppety in the sense that I don't know if I'm allowed to love them, but I always love the little voices that they give the goblins, that sort of weird, high-pitched, accented, funny goblin voice where it's like, Risa, Risa, rah! It's sort of racist, it sort of sounds like Speedy Gonzales sometimes. I don't know. Is it racist? Are the goblins racist?
Not really.
Am I allowed to like them?
Normally when you look at fantasy properties, they all sound like they're from the South. So there's a lot of Cornish accents. And when you play things like Fable, and it's like everyone's got a Cornish accent, they're like, Ranger, kind of thirsty. And it's very much the same. It's very much the same with Labyrinth. The fact that these characters, they're very sort of like fishwifey, and they got that sort of cackly, or they got really sort of deep, dopey voices, because that's how characters, if you're a big character, that's how you talk. It's also fun how Henson could never make any of his characters uniform in their size, because goblins are uniform in their size. They're very small, very sneaky, and they're, as I said, they're just cheeky, they're sneaky bastards, but they have superior numbers on their side, which makes them dangerous. And when it comes to the Henson's goblins, they're all different sizes. They're just like a ragtag
They're almost
mob.
Different species. Yeah, they all look so different. And like when you look in that gang of goblins that are up on the screen, there's like tiny little ones. You know, like in Star Wars, where Jabba the Hutt has that little like
Fetus Crumb.
I assumed you would know its name. Attached to it,
Yeah.
It's got like one of them. It's got like a mini, tiny like pet goblin. You know when like bears have like teddy bears in fiction, where they're like, I'm a bear and this is my teddy bear. I'm an anthropomorphic bear and this is my teddy bear. It's like that. There's like the goblins, and then there's like little mini weird goblins that sort of are slightly different colours, and their eyes are all like glistening and red. Like I really honed in on the sort of like fear factor of these goblins, because they look very scary, and if they weren't saying and acting how they are, it would be really horrific. Do you have the Goblins of the Labyrinth book? Because apparently it goes... I was trying to find out their names and their backstories, but I don't have that book. And I know that's really awful to admit in public, but I don't.
I flicked through it so many times when I was in Borders, but again, it's a big coffee book. So it's not something that, unless you've got like space to have, or you live in a child-free house where you can have coffee books out, and then when people come around for coffee, you can like go, oh, look at my beautiful Lady Gaga photo book or something. Whereas all my photo books, like the Making of Godzilla and stuff, they're all safe on the shelf and stuff, so they don't get to be out and about. But yeah, it's a really sort of nice book, but I could never sort of bring myself to buy it. It was sort of like just one of those things that's fun to flick through when you're in the shop, but you know that if you got it home, it would just, you'd never look at it again.
Yeah.
So that's why I never picked up, because the same author also did the Squash Fairies book as well.
Yeah.
Which is wonderfully twisted.
One day I'll buy it. But yeah, so I don't know any of the goblins' names, and I feel like a fraud.
We will find them out and put them on the Instagram and that, so people can find it. Or if people want to tell us what they are, we'd certainly be welcome to it. I thought that they had the red LEDs in the eyes, but it's actually how they shot it. They've because they've obviously shot on a black soundstage to cover a lot of like the background stuff. They used the light off the camera they're using is creating this red effect, because it's like kind of like a pinhole light they're using, and it has the same effect if you look at Fiona Apple's Criminal video. It's how they achieved the same effect with the eyes in that one. So I was like,
oh my god,
because I was like looking, I was kept rewinding and going back and just like, and they got like LED lights with like lighting up, and they say certain things like they got that little bit of magic to them, but no, it's just where the light hits the eye, and it creates that red effect.
I love it. I literally love it so much. So then they're like, what is that rubbish? It doesn't even start with I wish.
It's a very Russian accent, isn't it? Now I'm playing it over my head. It's kind of like a very sort of like a Russian accent, which again would play into the folk tales sort of aspect of Labyrinth. And when you look at things like The Storyteller, which Henson also did, he did a number of stories from Russia. I love the fact they had devils who were smoking and playing cards.
Love it. Oh, true to the real fairy tale. Most fairy tales had the devil in it because they were often like warnings or whatever.
Oh yeah,
be good. And
Dragon Ball's got Satan in it.
Well, die.
Dragon Ball's got a Mr. Satan in it. Shall I say?
Ah yes, that classic fairy tale Dragon Ball.
Yeah, Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
You know, it's only like some 400 odd episodes of it. It's its own epic tale.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm already trying to work my way through One Piece.
Yeah, that's another thing.
It's going to take me the rest of my life, so I'm booked, I'm afraid.
I'm already wrapping the Straw Hat Pirates tonight with my shirt choices, so...
Nice.
Yeah.
So then Sarah's like, oh, fuck, Toby, shut the hell up. You're so annoying. Which is valid because he is.
Can we touch on the fact she's using the baby hat as well, which sort of represents her childness? Because I said she herself is still a child at this point. She has not blossomed from this journey into womanhood.
Isn't that funny? We don't say that men blossom. Men don't blossom.
No, men are toughened by the world and women.
Like Spartans.
This is the thing, because men are sort of like, when you look at the male journey compared to like the heroine journey, the male journey is all full of like strife and being forced to toughen up to the reality of the real world, and the fact that the idea that you enter into the real world and you've been sheltered for all these years by your home and your family, and that by being put into the real world you're forced to toughen up and to learn to stand on your own. And I know that someone really outlined it. I know Christine over at the Feminine Critique podcast was like talking about the heroine's journey, because she was like talking about Rey's journey in the new Star Wars movie, and the Empire
journey that got interrupted and then ruined. Oh, that's my hot take on the last Star Wars movie.
I still haven't seen the last one yet, so. But
don't just end it with The Last Jedi, which is the best Star Wars movie.
It's a remake of the first Star Wars movie, though.
The Last Jedi isn't. The Force Awakens is.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Karen.
The Last Jedi is a piece of fucking art.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I will find out. I will get some research and we will talk about the heroine's journey on our next episode, because it's, as I said, I don't want to sit here and just like err my way through what it possibly could be. So I will find out for our next one. Yeah, I'd be really
interested to hear that. Yeah, and we can sort of cross-reference it and see how much it, see what it does.
So
then she's all like, I wish I did know what to say to get the goblins to take you away. And then the goblins are handily very, like, it's the best piece of exposition ever. They're like, I wish the goblins would come and take you away right now. That's not hard, is it? It's so good. You're like, perfect. Now we know. Thank you, goblins.
It's also fun how you can have comedic elements and still not lose any of the tension of the scene.
Yeah, exactly. It's really tense because you know that she has to say the lines, and you know that they're not a threat because you've got that one that's like, did she say it? And they're like, shut up!
I don't know how many times I see that, but it still cracks me up.
Do you know why? It's because his eyes, it's a fucking puppet. Someone crafted it out of random bits of material, and yet it's not. It's a living, breathing goblin, because when it says that and everyone says to shut up, its eyes widen in panic and it brings its hands up to its mouth so quickly in like a dumbfounded shock at its own audacity. And it's so magical. It's like when Kermit blows the candle out in A Muppet Christmas Carol and you're like, wait, he's made of fuzzy felt. How did he do that? It's that they're real, they're there. And it's so funny because it's full comedic timing. But it's a puppet. It's a spoiler alert, it's a puppet. But it's like, what? But it's not a puppet, it's real. It's a real thing that lives somewhere, and they employed them all. Like the orcs from Lord of the Rings. That's not the New Zealand rugby team. That's the Uruk-hai. Like, I believe it. It's so good. So then she puts Toby to bed, and he keeps crying. And I always find it really distracting that the child actor, the baby that they have playing Toby, like, wriggles around a lot and, like, pulls himself onto his front after she's laid him down. And I'm like, Toby, you missed your mark. You meant to just stay staring at the ceiling, honestly. Don't work with children or animals. And then Sarah goes to the light switch, which is such a pivotal point in this scene. It's such a great little prop. And again, like, she is my idol, and like, I have pretty much lived my life the way she does the next thing that she does, because it's so dramatic. She's looking at the baby with her hand on the light switch, and she's like, I wish the goblins would come and take you away. Switch. Right now. And then she leaves the room and the baby goes silent. And then Jennifer Connelly's face in the landing when she can no longer hear Toby is so good, because if I had been her age and I had been employed in this movie, I would have overacted the shit out of it. But she brings such attention to the scene. It's just her. There's just her. There's no one else in the room yet. It's just Jennifer Connelly and the camera, and no sound. And she is bringing full on, like, final girl vibes of, like, fear and tension and confusion and worry all in one moment. And, like, she, like, freezes in the landing. And, like, what I mean when I say I've copied her my whole life is just that I've timed everything I've ever done to be this dramatic and intense. And she's like, Toby? And it's just so good. It's so tense. Why aren't you crying? I always thought she said that a little bit weird, like she was trying to do a British accent or something. And she's like flicking the light switch and it's not going on. And you know what that means because you live in the world where movies exist. And, oh, God, she looks over at the crib and the blanket, like, cackles and moves. And, like, she jumps back and you're like, fuck, is he dead? Like, has he been eaten? Is she going to, like, rip the blanket off and he's going to be, like, half-eaten Toby? No, this is 1986's Labyrinth by Jim Henson. But you would believe
said take him away, not to eat the baby.
If this had been Del Toro doing it, if this was Pan's Labyrinth, Toby would have been eaten. So that's so good.
If this Del Toro's, the baby would have been fine. It's the only children that are eaten are the ones who can't follow the frickin' rules about not touching anything.
She was hungry. Let her alone. She's like a child. She's living in like poverty. It was a grape. She was
they
fine.
were like the most basic rules. Go in there. Don't touch anything.
It was a grape. What are you going to do? She was hungry. I forgive her. It's okay.
So.
Didn't do her any good in the end. Oh, no,
I have to say, though, again, this is parental instinct comes in. It is so traumatizing when the baby disappears now. It's like
have you seen The Witch?
Fear of. Yes, I've seen The Witch.
How'd you feel about that?
Again, The Witch is such a slow burn. It's
just
I
mean in terms of like spoilers for The Witch.
Oh, I mean, I obviously I think anytime like you have this fear as a parent of your child going missing, and this doesn't. I tell you this, no matter how old and capable they have, this fear does not ever sort of leave you. So while I can also see the amount of times I've had the nights where you're in Sarah's position and you're calling on the Goblin King to come and take this child away.
For the love
and of course it never
Goblin
works.
King, please hear my prayer.
And it's all in you there and you're like, but what the child didn't know that the Goblin King gets around a lot and he had made many promises.
So she's sort of established that the Goblin King's in love with her, and then she sort of proves that she's got these powers. But then I always took it as just like a generic thing. Like if anyone at any point was like, I wish the goblins would come and take you away right now, they would do it. Like you wouldn't have to be in love with Jennifer Connelly in order to be able to do that.
That particular story plot seems to be the jumping off point for so much fan fiction that we've been reading at the moment. Which also makes me question, it's like, do a lot of these people understand the relationship that Sarah and Jared have? Because they seem to think that it's this big romantic thing. Not that he's just actually a very sadistic and cruel bastard who likes playing on her emotions. Which seems to also get edited out.
I mean, if you watched this when you were like 13, like all the cool people did, then you're like, this is the most romantic thing I've ever seen. Because up until that point, your only understanding of movie relationships are like that wonderful chart that exists online where it's like, and in this movie, the age gap between the leading man and the leading lady was 37 years. And in this movie, the gap between the leading lady is 12 years. And like, the lead woman is always way younger than the lead man. So when you're 13 and you're watching it, and it's all implied as romantic and sexual, and it's got that little thing, and it's sexy, and David Bowie's penis is like right there, you're like, this is romantic, and this is nice, and this is good. You're meant to then grow up, rewatch it, and be like, oh! But sometimes you don't want to, because as I said, David Bowie.
I think there's a lot of self-editing where a lot of people edit out his first introduction and instead choose to focus on the enchantment moments of him with like crystal balls and in masquerades, which...
Oh my God.
I have to
That's the saddest
say...
thing I've ever heard, because we will ramp up into it. But his arrival is the greatest moment in cinematic history. Like... fucking dropping the snow globe and saying Rosebud is nothing compared to David Bowie's entrance in Labyrinth.
Coming up in our next episode. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting when we get into that. We have actually got a number of guests lined up for future episodes, which we're excited to be. We've also had so many requests for people to talk about the masquerade sequence as well. I did not realise just how popular that masquerade sequence was until we had people wanting to work with us on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, you know what I said about cleaning scenes in movies? The same applies for Masquerade. That's why The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Okay.
If you can get the devil at your masquerade, you're on, like, 5 stars automatically.
See, when we're talking about my favourite scenes, though, it's always like, you know, the cleaner, the Goblin City, the introduction of Ludo. These are like the scenes that I would have thought were
boring. No, this is really good because you're like enjoying different aspects of the movie. Whereas, yeah, to me, I'm like, oh, the cleaner scene. It's I guess. David Bowie's entrance, however.
I just love that. As I said,
in history.
The Siege of the Goblin City, where you got in the middle of the battle, you got one character who's like, "That's it, I'm going to bed."
That's it, I'm going to bed.
Which I just love.
Because I would watch this movie on a daily basis. I'm not joking. I would watch this movie on a daily basis at some point in my life. I would often fast forward through the Siege of the Goblin City because I'd be like, boring. Get to the Escher scene. I know.
My wife, she doesn't like when the action scene's going too long. Her review of Transformers was they just kept fucking fighting.
Stop fucking fighting.
Well, my water cooler review of Transformers was they go from one location, reduce it to dust, then go on to the next. It was fantastic.
I loved it.
5 stars.
Yeah, I get it, and like. I can really appreciate it now. I can appreciate the nuance, and it's really not as long as I remember it was when I was like a tween and watching this, because I thought the Siege of the Goblin, and we're not talking about the Siege of the Goblin, I thought it went on forever. Whereas now I can watch it and I'm like, oh, it's like 5 minutes. What was I even worried about? Yeah, no. This is definitely one of my favourite scenes, and the next one is my absolute favourite scene. Like, it changed me as a person kind of favourite scene. But oh my God. So, like, the bedsheets are cackling, and then she lifts the thing up, and the lighting on her face, the way they put the shadows is so good. And she rips the blanket off, and Toby's not there, and like, there's not even any music. It's just the storm that you can hear. And then it's literally like the end scene in Hereditary, where she gasps, turnarounds at the owl in the window, and just ever so quickly, a little goblin can be seen, like, in the background, stepping out from the doorway, and you're like, shit, it's the naked people from Hereditary.
We got this to discuss in the next one when it just goes full horror.
Yeah,
but yeah, this was pretty intense. I remember being a kid, and I think it's. It was the bit I didn't particularly enjoy as a kid. I enjoyed it once we get into Labyrinth World. I think that then I was like really happy. I was back to my happy place.
It's fair, and I think because I was able to relate so fiercely to Sarah, I had a real affinity the more I watched it for these earlier scenes where she's in her comfort zone, as it were, and we're getting to know her as a person. And you know, I loved her little dramatic tale in the mirror as a little bedtime story, and I was just like, this girl's cool. She basically reminds me of me, and that's really awesome. So I really like it, and then I loved how it switched to like horror, because it does in this movie. It's sort of tonally all over the place a little bit with its sort of aesthetic. Like, this is very horror. Next one is very horror, but then it's like hardcore fantasy. Oh, I can't wait for the next scene. But this scene's really great. It's so good with the storm and the like 4-poster bed. You're right, this house is gorgeous. Like, they have a literal 4-poster bed. And like French windows in the main bedroom. Like, where does that lead?
You look at the fact that you look at the layout though, where where she's on the stairs and she's looking down at the stepmother. Yeah. Who lives in a house which has like staircases like that if they can't afford a maid?
They're the type of staircases that you would like reveal your teenager for her debutante.
It is, isn't it? It's
like, here comes Annabeth. Oh, look at her, she's so grown up. Annabeth, you're a lady today. I don't know. That was probably incredibly mean.
You see, I'm just thinking of the Dr. Pepper advert, where she like comes down the stairs. It's like, how's my 2 favorite guys? And he's like standing over her father with the bloody coal shovel who's been wrestling with.
That sounds awesome.
Have you never seen that episode? Advert?
No.
Oh right, I've got stuff to send you. Along with my usual like cryptozoology stuff that I pepper all my emails with now.
Yeah, and like random fanfic that I'm like save for later because ew.
Oh yeah, we found the Goblin Queen.
Need to read that.
Oh, can't wait to get into that. It's always interesting when you put your own photo on the cover of your fanfic.
Yeah.
And then this, just before we came on tonight, we found how you can make Jared and Sarah masquerade costumes for your dog. But it looks like, this is the worst part, is the fact that they've got the baby grow for Toby in front, so it looks like the dog is bursting through Sarah's stomach, like chest burster style, to be the head of this head of the baby. And it's sort of like, you cannot be that cruel to your pets, but if you've got very patient dogs, there's a how-to guide on the Instagram that you can follow.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now and I'm obsessed. Look at that. Look how good that dog looks in that wig. Like, he's crushing it. Oh my god, if they put makeup on that dog. They have as well. That dog has Jareth eyebrows.
Wow.
He's crushing it. Good job, dog. You nailed it.
Anything else you want to talk about this one?
So very briefly at the end we get the owl, which we are led to assume, we're led to believe, we're shown is Jareth, the Goblin King. And
yes.
We saw the owl once at the beginning, and if you're following, I feel like we should stick to these, stick to these choo-choo trains that we've picked. So your choo-choo train is it's all in her head, it's a dream, it's a metaphor about growing up. And my choo-choo train is all aboard to the fucking labyrinth, this shit happened. So we've seen evidence in this scene for both arguments. And so for my argument, it's very easy in regards to the owl, because the owl is David Bowie, and he's there at the beginning watching Sarah because he's in love with her, and that makes sense. And then he's there tapping on the window to be let in, little pig. And then, obviously, spoiler alert, in the next scene, he'll come in, and I will... I'm not going to finish that sentence. Then... Yeah.
It's a very different version of Labyrinth that Emily's been watching. It's
no,
like,
it's
I've
the
come
same,
in with my
but
special
no one sees
gloves.
it the way I do. I can't be alone in this. I did this episode on my podcast twice. I did it with friends, and then I did it as a drinking game with friends. And Flo was like, spent the whole thing being like, okay, but I'm not leaving until you understand that this is not sexy or right. And I was like, I don't know, man. We never truly came to an agreement. But in terms of the choo-choo train where it's in her head...
Yes.
What's your argument? Why is the owl there?
Flick of the switch. Okay? When she goes and says, I wish the goblins to take you away, we have the flick of the switch, which would be her going into her head. This
Okay.
is the switching point. It's a very where you got to basically be, and then she comes out of the room and then goes back in. Everything which follows from there is in her head, so she's going off. Where in reality, she probably just went to her room and ignored the child until her stepmother came home and then shouted at her because the baby's there crying still. But that's how we have like it becomes like super sort of like tense, and we can have the owl scratching at the window, and which is obviously jab. But at the same time, I have obviously have that a theory, but at the same time, like you, I enjoy the we're going into the fantastic world of Labyrinth. I'm not like sitting there going, oh well, this is clearly a reference to this, and this is her dealing with this. I'm not sitting like that. It's just, as I say, it's just that the alternate track you can follow. But certainly when I'm watching it, I'm fully invested.
I think we should follow it as we go. And I've dubbed you the knight of that side.
It's just going to be basically moments which show her on her journey, and I think this is also I think as we go we'll be able to compare it to the heroine's journey as well, and see how many points it hits. I'm trying to remember, what's the test where you can have two characters talk and not mention a man?
Elwood, I'm surprised at you.
There's
the
a lot
Bechdel test named after Alison Bechdel.
Does this pass the Bechdel test?
She talks to her stepmother. They don't mention any men by name. They don't even mention the dad. She talks about how maybe they're talking about Toby, arguably. I think there's a case for this passing the Bechdel test because she talks to her stepmom about just like being a teenager. But there's no women in the Labyrinth. No competition until we get to the manga. But yeah, there's no women in the Labyrinth.
There's female goblins there. Like the one who goes, that's not the words. I always thought she was a female goblin, but then again, goblins aren't. I don't know, because that's what I just felt like in my head.
I always assumed there's ones which were like genderless.
There's one which wears like the fishwife headscarves with the crow-like faces.
Oh yeah, and there's like there's the garbage lady.
Who could be? Does she really class as a goblin though?
Well,
because she's going to be someone else. Because there's several of them. Because obviously there's the female garbage lady, and in the background you can see there's a male garbage man as well. So, but yes, we will.
And
figure out about
she talks to the garbage lady about her like panda slippers. So that technically passes the Bechdel test.
Okay.
You love your panda slippers. Didn't want to throw those away.
I love this movie.
This is so hard to not like skip ahead. This is just like,
yeah, it's so impossible.
It's like, no, stay on the track.
Oh, your panda slippers. You know how much you love your panda slippers.
Yeah, great scene. Love the scene.
Yes, surprisingly,
big fan of this movie.
As I'm finding whenever we do these like chapter by chapter breakdowns, you can have a scene like this, and when you sit there and like break it down, there's a lot more to this scene than you would think. It's sort of like just like a real sort of like gateway moment where the real world sort of goes into
chilling.
fantasy.
It's really chilling.
Yeah, definitely so.
Just because I think I didn't pay attention properly, but it's just the cut out of Toby's crying is so scary. And I feel like it would be too cheesy if it was in a real horror movie. People wouldn't... They'd just be like, what? But here it works so well with the build-up and the tension and the goblin introduction, so we know there's a threat out there. Yeah, it's a really good scene. Really good scene. Ramping up into an even better scene.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, that brings on that note, it brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Thank you as always for listening. If you haven't done already, please do hit the like and subscribe button wherever you happen to be listening to us, and maybe leave a review, as it all helps raise the profile of the show. We are on Twitter and we are on Instagram, so you can come and check out our posts that we put up. We've been putting lots of behind the scenes footage, lots of fan art, all kinds of bits and pieces on there. So, and we'd love to hear any of your theories on the film as well. We certainly always love to hear from you guys. Before we go, Emily, anything you want to plug at all? Because you've certainly been doing the podcast rounds recently, so.
Yeah. So I don't know when all this stuff is coming out, but I've been guesting on a few pods. Yesterday, we released the latest episode of Have Not Seen This with Rafe, and we look up the Oscars, which is obviously on Sunday. And it's basically me talking about Promising Young Woman for approximately 43 minutes of the 2-hour episode. So if you're down for that, go check that out. Also, other people have really good opinions about Oscar-nominated movies, and I talk about Promising Young Woman. I'm on a bunch, but I don't know when they're coming out, so I don't know whether to mention them or not. I wrote a bunch of articles for The Lamb. I wrote two. I wrote 2 articles for The Lamb. So head over there and find Why This Film pod. I wrote about Best Supporting Actress for the Oscars and, would you look at that, Promising Young Woman. If you haven't seen it, go and see Promising Young Woman.
It's really good.
Fucking best
when we finish this, it'll probably be Promising Young Woman minute. So
yeah, it'll be Promising Young Woman, the breakdown, and it'll be me going, go and watch the movie, go and watch the movie, go and watch the movie.
I'm looking forward to your promised Halloween costume from it, because that.
Oh my god, I'm literally doing it. I'm doing it.
Because I got your onslaught of tweets about it on Saturday. And then it was like...
It was a real onslaught.
And then it's sort of like, I got my Halloween costume sorted. And I'm thinking, which scene's it going to be? Is it waitress? Or is it going to be something else?
She's not a waitress.
What is she? She works in a coffee house.
Oh, she's a barista. She's a barista. She works in a coffee shop.
She works in a coffee shop with her own brand of customer service.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So good. Yeah, and actually, the director, Emerald Fennell, who is one of the greatest people to have ever existed's sister, Coco Fennell, great name, I know, look her up on Instagram, because she has her own clothing line, many of which were seen in the movie, including the fun baseball tee with the unicorn on it, which is currently going for about £100 I'm personally saving up, as I am for the rose-petalled, flirty long dress that she wore when she first meets Bo Burnham for coffee. Basically a lot of Coco Fennell's clothes are in the movie, and I'm going to buy them now. Yep.
Awesome. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do as well. We have an email which is through dangersuntold99@gmail.com, so feel free to send us your fan fiction, send us any bits of thoughts on Labyrinth. We'd certainly love to hear from you guys. But that is all really for tonight's episode. But make sure you join us next time as we dive into chapter 4, The Goblin King.
Yeah. Well, wasn't this one called The Goblin King? And the next one's called I Wish?
No, this one's I Wish.
My Google Doc is wrong. Why would that be? That's so weird. I thought it would be. Yeah, oh my god, it's called The Goblin King. Guess what's going to happen? I'm so pumped. I can't wait.
But until then, thank you as always for listening. Thank you to my co-host Emily.
Thank you.
And we'll be back next week to talk about The Goblin King. Until then, good night.